Good morning. Well, here we are, the last day of February. Seems like spring has arrived. I go out of my place, I call it Chateau Debris. The weeds are almost as high as my head. It's time to do that thing again. But this month of February, it's flown by. And as I thought this week, I haven't specifically talked about Black History Month. And I'm so thankful to see that the PBS channels and even the network channels are carrying a lot of great documentaries. I've been watching a lot of the things that Henry Louis Gates Jr. has done. And of course, the replays of Martin Luther King. And there are so many people that are more aware of the struggle that African Americans have had to endure and are currently and continuously enduring as we go forward through time. And as I watched these specials and I thought about the struggle, I also thought about the struggle that so many people of color, immigrants, minorities, have endured since the birth of this nation. I thought, wow, I can remember reading somewhere in history that the same year we erected the Statue of Liberty, we also passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. What a dichotomy. And I think about, we call it racism now, and I think about that, and we're trying to approach the problem of racism. And I kind of take the viewpoint of Cornel West. We don't have a problem with racism. We have a catastrophe of racism. We have a catastrophe of poverty. We have a catastrophe of healthcare and hunger and homelessness. Those aren't problems. Those are catastrophic experiences that people of this country, supposedly the richest country in the world, go through on a daily basis. I thought, where do all these problems, these catastrophes come from? I've given that a great deal of thought and contemplation. And I don't speak from the Bible very often, but I think there are 13 words printed in the Bible. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. We've all heard them. But I think these are perhaps the most profound words and prophetic words that have been written. And those 13 words are, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." Not just some evil, all kinds of evil. And I think about the conditions in this country and throughout the world. Those conditions have been created, quite frankly, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I think they have been created and perpetuated by the greed that exists in the white aristocracy of this nation and of the world. Poverty, the aristocracy has engineered, designed, and perpetuates poverty. Racism, people are racist by nature. They've been taught racism, and that racism has been cultured and funded and maintained by the aristocracy, the greed of the aristocracy. Poverty, hunger, it's all designed and all perpetuated, I believe. And we keep dealing with problems, and in the process of trying to solve a problem, we create more, but it doesn't get to the repair of the catastrophes that we as human beings deal with every day. And now we have the catastrophe of off the charts, off the records of severe and violent weather patterns. And where does that come from? It comes from the greed of raping the earth, taking advantage of the natural resources, the irresponsibility of massive pollution. It all stems from the love of money. So, how do we deal with that? How do we process all of that? Well, that hasn't, Paul wrote it about it when he wrote to Timothy. It's existed forever. That thing called greed, the love of money, and the power that you can buy with that money, the influence you can buy with that money. And currently in this country, that, I'll call it the white aristocracy, has built this wall of immunity around themselves. They take on no responsibility for their greed. None whatsoever. They have no remorse, there's no morality, there's certainly no integrity. It's just rape, plunder, and greed. That sounds pretty dark, doesn't it? But I am right this minute filled with hope, probably more than I've had in a very long time. The young people of this world are tired of the crap. They're tired of the constant catastrophes caused by this greed. There's a group. I encourage each one of you to Google it. It's called Sunrise Movement Petaluma. And Petaluma is just one facet, they call it a pod of this global group. And it's young people. I looked at a lot of things they're doing, and it's young people from like 15 to 25 or 30. And the leadership roles in most of these pods are led by women. And they have fire in their souls. And they're doing something that my mother used to tell my brother and I to do, and I've told all of you folks this several times over the years. Every time we were going to go out into the world on our own, go down to the park, she always said, well, just hold hands and stick together and everything will be all right. And that's what these young people are doing. They aren't focused on one particular cause. The main focus is trying to bring about a Green New Deal. But they are totally aware of all the other catastrophes in our society. So with that knowledge and with that awareness, they're reaching out and holding hands with Black Lives Matter, Poor People's Campaign, Me Too, all of the movements they're encouraging. Let's hold hands and start taking on this aristocracy. And I wish them well. I'll coin a phrase that President Reagan made once. He was talking to the Soviet Union, and he said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." And I encourage these young people, Americans, kids of all over the world, let's tear down that wall of immunity. And I don't know which movement, I don't know which direction it'll come from, makes no difference. But when that wall of immunity starts to crumble, when the aristocracy begins to have to take responsibility for their greed, we will see change just like when that wall came down in Berlin. And these young people, they have fire in their souls, they have energy. And it's up to us, my friends, us old folks. We must embrace them. We must support them. We must cheer them on. We must give them funding. Because they have the energy. They have the right idea. Hold hands and stick together, and together we can accomplish this. And once that wall of immunity starts to crumble, people all over the world are going to see this example. This example of what people can do when they stick together, when they work together to achieve a common goal based on the good of the whole. And things will change. They truly, truly will change in every facet of life, faster than most of us are going to be able to keep up with. These young people, they are so technologically advanced, and they're so comfortable in this tech world, in this mass media. I am just so excited. And they're not alone. There are so many movements of people. The corporate-owned, the aristocracy-owned media, 90% of our TV and radio and publishing, they're not going to talk about this because that's part of their wall of immunity. But we, holding hands and sticking together, we can have a future for humanity, a future for this planet. There will be food in this world to eat when my great-grandchildren are starting their families. There will be land that is inhabitable on this planet. And they're not only going to survive, they're going to thrive. Because our youngsters, they have that fire in their soul. Their intent is based solely on the good of the whole. Happy spring, folks. I think there's no way to start this rebirth of nature than with a rebirth of our hope and our knowing that we, our children, our grandchildren, possess all that we need to not only survive, but to thrive. And so it is.